My name is Elliot Ward. In the spring of 1996, I drove north to a place called Brookevale, a small town you won't find on most maps, tucked between the pines and forgotten railway lines of western Massachusetts. I went there chasing a headline. What I found instead was much worse. Three people, locals, all in their 30s, had been found at the edge of the woods just beyond town limits. The official report called it a fire accident, a mishandled ritual bonfire. But the first witness had used another word. She called it a pyre. The papers barely covered it, half a paragraph in the Herald before vanishing from the cycle. It should have been the kind of story that disappears as fast as it surfaces. But something about the phrasing caught my attention. Ritual elements at the scene. That's what they said. I'd covered cult activity before, fringe faiths, doomsday groups, the usual post-satanic panic hysteria, but there was something different here. So I packed my bag, loaded my recorder, and made the 6-hour drive to Brookevale. The drive itself was uneventful, though the landscape changed the closer I got. The highway gave way to narrow, uneven back roads lined with bare trees and quiet houses set too far back from the road. The air had that thick, early spring smell, damp soil, and wood smoke. By the time I reached the Welcome to Brookevale sign, the sun was already dropping behind the hills. I remember the town feeling old, but not historic. No bronze plaques or restored storefronts, just aging paint and faded lettering, a single gas station, a laundromat, a diner, and the motel, Lucy's. It had one of those half-lit neon signs that buzzed faintly in the dark, the kind that looks tired of staying on. I checked in just after dusk. Lucy herself, I assumed that was her, handed me a brass key attached to a heavy wooden tag. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. People in Brookevale smiled a lot, I would later realize. They just didn't mean it. The room was small but clean. Beige carpet, floral bedspread, a single window facing the woods. There was a slight hum in the walls, maybe from the fridge or the sign outside. I unpacked my camera, set it on the nightstand, and made a quick note. April 17th, Brookevale Motel. 3 victims, higher fire. Investigate scene tomorrow morning. That night the air felt heavy, maybe from the long drive, maybe from what I'd come there to do. I didn't sleep much. The next morning I made my way to the edge of the forest where the fire had taken place. The site had already been cleared by the county forensics team, cordoned off by a line of bright yellow tape that fluttered weakly in the breeze. All that remained was a blackened patch of soil and a few stones scorched white from heat. A faint smell still lingered in the air, not of smoke anymore, but of something sterile and final. I started taking photos. Old Polaroid, film, nothing digital. That's how I worked. Document first, question later. I moved slow, circling the site, keeping my boots just outside the tape line. That's when I noticed something hanging from one of the trees about 20 feet away. It was small, hand-sized, maybe made of twine and reeds. An effigy, I thought at first. But as I got closer, I realized it was a kind of woven sun, circular, with radiating spokes, like a dream catcher that had forgotten what it was supposed to protect. It swayed gently, though there was no wind. It wasn't tagged by forensics. No evidence marker, no tape, nothing. I shouldn't have taken it, I know that now. But at the time I told myself I was just doing my job. I slipped it carefully into a paper envelope and marked it with the date. Back at the motel, I spread the day's photos across the bed and started reviewing. The Polaroids came out in that soft, muted tone, the kind of color that always looks like memory. Most of them were unremarkable. Trees, burnt soil, sky. But on the last one, something caught my eye. In the tree line, far back, half hidden in the blur of focus, there was a dark shape. At first I thought it was a smudge on the lens, but the more I looked, the more I realized it had form. Shoulders, maybe a head tilted slightly. Someone, or something, standing just far enough away to see, but not be seen clearly. I told myself it was nothing. Bad lighting, lens flare. Still, I turned the photo over and wrote in pencil. Figure. That night, I remember the motel felt quieter than before. Even the hum in the walls seemed to fade. I left the light on, went over my notes again,
tried to rationalize what I'd seen. It worked for a while, until I started hearing the footsteps.
They were soft, slow, crossing from one end of the room to the other. At first, I thought it was someone upstairs, or in the next room over.
But Lucy's was a single-story building.
When I opened my eyes, the sound stopped. I sat up, listened, nothing.
And then the phone rang. I remember the sound, sharp, mechanical, startling in the silence.
I picked it up, half expecting a front desk apology for the noise. But there was nothing on the line, just static. A long, steady hiss like wind through a tunnel. I waited, listening, trying to make out a voice. There wasn't one, just the faintest suggestion of words beneath the static, like the shape of speech, without the sound. Then the line went dead.
I didn't sleep again that night.
I sat by the window watching the woods. There's something about small towns at night. They don't glow, they absorb light. Even the stars feel dimmer, like the sky's been painted over. I told myself it was fatigue.
New place, long drive, too much coffee.
But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next morning, I packed up the effigy, the photos, and my Polaroid camera.
Before I left the room, I noticed something small, a smear of ash in the inside of the window glass, shaped almost like a handprint. Maybe I imagined it, maybe I didn't. Either way, I told myself I'd be back later. I wanted to talk to someone in town, maybe the librarian, somebody who remembered things.
For now, all I had were pictures and a strange woven symbol. When I first came to Brookevale, I told myself I was just doing my job. One story, a few interviews, maybe a strange photo or two for the paper, if I was lucky.
But after that first night, after the sound of footsteps in my room and that static phone call, I realized Brookevale wasn't the kind of town you just cover.
It's the kind that swallows you, slowly, politely, until you forget you ever meant to leave. The morning after, I woke with that kind of heavy, unshakable fog in my head, like I hadn't slept at all.
Lucy's motel was quiet. Too quiet. You know how most motels hum with life? Televisions behind thin walls, trucks on the highway, somebody yelling across the parking lot. None of that here. Just the low buzz of the fluorescent light in the hallway and the faint drip from the ice machine.
I remember sitting at the little desk by the window, the one with the wood peeling off around the edges, spreading out my photos from the pyre site. Most of them were what you'd expect: charred ground, police tape fluttering.
But that effigy, the one I found hanging from the tree, it stood out.
It looked handmade, but not random. Twigs bent into a perfect circle, smaller sticks woven like rays, threads stretched tight across the middle, almost reverent. I'd seen things like that before, in articles about folk traditions. Symbols meant to ward off evil, but this one didn't feel protective.
It felt expectant.
I slipped it into a plastic evidence sleeve, labeled it with the date, old habit from my newsroom days, and tucked it into my bag. That's when I decided I'd hit the library. Every small town's got one, usually one person running it, always the same lady. Always knows more than she'll say. Brookevale's was no different.
The library sat at the edge of town, next to a diner that hadn't changed its sign since the 70s.
Inside, it smelled like paper and old carpet, that dry, familiar smell that makes you whisper even when you're alone.
The librarian, Ms. Keller, her name tag said, greeted me like she'd been waiting.
Not surprised, not warm either, just aware.
Morning, I said. I'm looking for any records on local churches, particularly ones from the 80s.
She adjusted her glasses and studied me. You writing about the fires?
I hesitated.
Maybe. Just trying to understand what's been happening.
Her lips pressed together. Then she nodded toward a back corner. Local history's that way. Don't mind the dust. Nobody's looked through it in years.
That corner was like a different world. Old town ledgers, newsletters, yellowed pamphlets. The kind of things people print when they still believe every word matters. It took maybe an hour before I found it. An envelope tucked between two hymnals. Inside, a folded letter on church stationery, faint ink and an emblem at the top. A rising sun with 7 lines radiating from it. The heading read,
The Children of Dawnlight March service schedule.
And underneath that, a message typed in uneven letters.
Even in the darkness, the dawn will arrive.
Below that were mass times, all normal except one. Sunday morning listed as 12 a.m., midnight mass.
No address, no name of a pastor, nothing else. Just that phrase again, even in the darkness. I remember sitting there, tapping my finger on the paper, thinking how familiar that phrasing sounded.
It wasn't biblical. It was something else. A slogan.
I brought the letter up to the front desk, asked Keller if she knew anything about the Children of Dawnlight.
She froze. Just for a second, but enough.
Then she said quietly, "Some things in this town don't need to be remembered."
I thanked her, took a photocopy of the letter, and left.
Outside, the sky had that strange overcast glow. Not dark, not bright, just suspended. The streets of Brookevale were nearly empty. Every face I passed seemed to flicker. That's the only way I can describe it, like a light struggling to stay on. On my way back to the motel, I turned on the police scanner in the car.
It was an old habit from working crime stories.
Most of what came through was normal chatter, routine stops, a lost dog.
But then came a burst of static, and through it, faintly, a dispatcher's voice saying something about a fire on the outskirts, old Miller property, and under that, barely audible, a kind of chanting. I turned up the volume. It vanished.
I sat there a moment, watching the tree line, the scanner crackling softly beside me.
Then instinct took over. I drove. The Miller property turned out to be a barn, or what was left of one. By the time I arrived, firefighters were already packing up, the air still thick with smoke. A body was being loaded into an ambulance under a sheet. I didn't ask questions, not right away. I'd learned that sometimes silence gets you further. When I finally did approach one of the firemen, a tall man with ash in his beard, he just shook his head and said, "Accident," then walked off.
Accidents don't usually involve symbols burned into the side of buildings.
But there it was, faint but visible, near the roof beam.
A sun with long, uneven rays.
I took a photo, wide angle.
Didn't notice anything at the time. Not until that night.
Back at the motel, I laid out the prints on the bed, the smell of smoke still in my hair. Most were just charred wood, half-collapsed structure, black sky.
But in the background of one, just behind the fire truck, was a shape. At first I thought it was just a trick of light, a blur, maybe a lens flare. But the longer I looked, the more it seemed solid. A figure, maybe 20 yards off, just inside the tree line, standing still, watching. I stared at that photo for a long time, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Bad exposure, shadow, whatever. Then I put the prints away, turned off the lamp, and tried to sleep. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a sound, faint, rhythmic. Footsteps, slow ones across the carpet. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move, just listened. The steps stopped near the foot of the bed. Silence. Then the phone rang. I jumped, heart pounding, reached over, picked it up. And all I heard was static. Not random static. Patterned, like someone breathing through it. I hung up and sat there, wide awake until dawn. The next morning, I went to the diner across from the library for coffee. The waitress smiled too much. Everyone in that town smiled too much. I asked her if she'd ever heard of the Children of Dawnlight. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, still smiling. Now, why would you go asking about something like that? I laughed it off, said I was just curious about local history. She leaned closer, voice low. History's one thing, resurrection's another. Then she straightened, filled my cup again, and walked away. That night, the rain came, heavy, one of those steady downpours that makes everything outside feel miles away. I stayed in my room, typing up notes, piecing together timelines, the fires, the symbols, the letter. It all pointed to something organized, intentional. But every official record stopped in 1987, as if the group had simply vanished. Around 11 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it just enough to see a woman, middle-aged, hair neatly pinned, smiling too wide. "Mr. Ward," she said softly, "you should know. There are things better left alone." Before I could respond, she turned, almost gracefully, and walked down the hallway.
When I looked again, she was gone.
No footsteps, no door closing, just gone. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in this story anymore.
Something, or someone, was tracking my progress.
Every clue I found, they already knew I'd find it.
And the strangest part, I wasn't sure if they wanted to stop me or guide me.
I looked out the window that night.
The rain had stopped, and out there, beyond the motel sign, in the field behind the woods, I saw it again. A single dim orange light, flickering.
Like the start of a fire.
I should have left Brookevale that night, packed up my things, thrown the effigy back where I found it, and just driven until the scanner went silent. But I didn't, because that's what this kind of story does to you. It convinces you you're the one exception, that you'll uncover the truth before it uncovers you. So I stayed, and by morning I had already decided where I'd go next.
The library again?
There was something I missed, something hiding in plain sight. There's a point in every investigation where exhaustion starts to feel like clarity, where you've been awake long enough, chasing the same loose ends, that your mind starts connecting things that maybe don't belong together.
By the time I woke up that third morning in Brookevale, I was already there. The motel room felt smaller. The wallpaper's pattern, pale yellow flowers, almost seemed to lean in toward me.
I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, telling myself it was just the humidity, just the fatigue.
But then I looked over at the photographs again, the ones from the barn fire, the pyre, and the strange effigy, and all I could think about was the letter I'd found at the library. Even in the darkness, the dawn will arrive.
It kept looping in my head, like a melody I couldn't place. The day started gray again. That's something I noticed about Brookevale. The sun never really shined there. It just diffused.
A soft, endless overcast that made time feel like it wasn't moving at all. I'd gone back to the library that morning. Ms. Keller was shelving returns behind the desk, and when she saw me walk in, she didn't even ask what I was looking for this time. She just said quietly, "You might try Seamus Pierce." I remember blinking at her, surprised. "Who's that?" "Local historian," she said, not meeting my eyes. "He knows more than most about this town. Lived here his whole life."
She lowered her voice.
"He doesn't talk to people much. But if anyone remembers the Children of Dawnlight, it'll be him."
I found his address in an old civic registry, tiny place on the far edge of town, past the sawmill.
When I pulled up, his house looked like something out of another decade.
A white porch with green trim, well-tended roses, and a brass mailbox polish so bright it caught what little light the day offered. I almost didn't want to knock. There was something about that house that felt final, like it was already keeping too many memories inside. When I did knock, a voice barked out from behind the door, old, gravelly. "Whatever it is, I ain't buying." I tried to explain through the wood. "Sir, my name's Elliot Ward. I'm a journalist. I just want to ask about the..." The door swung open mid-sentence, and there he was. Mr. Pierce looked to be in his late 70s, maybe early 80s. His eyes were sharp, though. That kind of sharp that comes from decades of watching people lie to you. I repeated my question, softer this time. "I'm just looking into some old records about a church, the Children of Dawnlight." The name changed his expression immediately. He stopped mid-motion, looked past me to the street, and for a second, I swear his face just drained of color. He muttered something under his breath. I couldn't catch what, then said, "You'd better come inside." His house smelled like lemon polish and pipe tobacco. Neat, tidy, not a speck of dust. Books lined every wall, floor to ceiling, stacked even in front of the windows. He gestured toward a worn armchair and sat opposite me. For a long time, he didn't say a word, just studied me. Finally, he asked, "Why are you asking about them?" I told him about the fires, the effigies, the letter from the 80s. He didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly, his jaw tightening the further I went. When I finished, he leaned back, rubbed his temples, and sighed. "I figured that name would come crawling back eventually," he said. "Everything does in this town.
Doesn't stay buried long.
He told me that back in the early 80s, the Children of Dawnlight weren't seen as a cult. Not at first. They started as a church group that branched off from the main parish. Small gatherings, sunrise services, talk of renewal and cleansing.
People liked them. They were friendly, polite, the kind that showed up on your doorstep with pamphlets and homemade bread.
But after a while, folks started to notice something strange. They never stopped smiling. Always calm, always cheerful, but hollow. Like they were rehearsing emotion rather than feeling it. Pierce said it was around then that he began keeping notes. He was the town clerk back then. Said he had to record property changes, new groups, everything that came across his desk. He got quiet for a bit before continuing. They called it enlightenment, he said. They said they'd found a way to bring light into darkness, to make a heaven here, not wait for it after.
He gave a low, humorless laugh. Sounded good, didn't it? People wanted to believe in something that easy.
I asked what happened to them.
He looked at me for a long time before answering. One night, he said, the church burned. Official story said it was a gas leak, but there were no bodies, not a single one. I asked if anyone investigated. Not really, he said. Most folks just wanted to move on. Pretend it never happened. He paused again, eyes distant. My brother was with them. Took his whole family. I never saw them again.
The room felt heavier after that.
The ticking of the wall clock got louder.
I asked him if he knew where the church had been. He hesitated, then nodded toward the north woods.
About 5 miles that way. They cleared the site afterward, said it was unsafe. But if you know where to look, you can still find the foundation. I thanked him for his time and stood to leave.
He followed me to the door, slower now, leaning on the frame. Before I could step outside, he said quietly, "You seem like a good man, Mr. Ward. Be careful. Some secrets, they don't want to be found."
I nodded, said I understood. But the truth is, I didn't. Not yet.
When I looked back from the car, he was still standing there on the porch.
Watching me drive away.
Back at the motel, the hallway felt colder. Lucy wasn't at the front desk, just a bell and a note that said "back soon."
In my room, I laid everything out again. The photos, the letter, my notes from Pierce. It was starting to look like one of those conspiracy boards you see in detective shows. Red strings and circles and too many arrows. I wasn't sure what I was looking for anymore.
Maybe a pattern,
Maybe a reason to leave.
but then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something through the window. A faint orange light, flickering in the distance. Same as before, and this time it didn't fade.
I remember standing there for a long time, staring through the glass.
Part of me wanted to grab the camera, run toward it, chase whatever was behind that glow. The other part, the rational part, told me not to. I listened to the rational part, for that night at least. I pulled the curtains closed, turned off the lamp, and sat in the dark. The sound of rain began again, soft at first, then steady.
A perfect rhythm for thinking too much.
That's when I realized I'd started whispering the phrase from the letter to myself without meaning to. Even in the darkness.
Like an echo that wasn't mine.
The next morning, I packed my bag and drove toward the north woods. Pierce had given me rough directions. Follow the old logging road until it curves east. Look for a stone wall covered in ivy. The forest there felt different,
The air thicker, somehow older.
I found the wall just where he said it would be, half buried, crumbling, with vines twisting over it like veins. And beyond that, through the trees, the faint outline of a foundation, rectangular, maybe the size of a small chapel.
I could still see where the door had been, a frame of blackened stone. I didn't cross it, not right away. There was this stillness, almost magnetic.
A pull that made the hair on my arms stand up. Eventually I stepped inside, nothing but moss, dirt, and a few splinters of old wood. But in the center, half buried, was something else. A circle of twigs,
An effigy, just like the one I'd found in the forest.
except this one was broken.
I took a photo and left. That evening I tried calling Pierce again.
No answer.
The phone rang and rang until the line went dead. I told myself he probably just didn't want to talk anymore. But deep down, I knew something about that silence wasn't ordinary.
Still, I stayed in that room.
Typing notes, listening to the rain, pretending this was just another story I'd file and forget. But Brookevale wasn't letting go.
Every night, that same light flickered beyond the trees. Every morning, it was gone, like it had never been there. And somewhere between those nights and mornings, I started dreaming about it. The glow, the warmth,
the whisper of that phrase again, close to my ear this time.
Even in the darkness.
I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, that I'd been in this town too long.
But I know now that's when it started to pull me in.
Not with fear, but with familiarity. As if, on some level, I already belonged here.
There's a strange kind of comfort in patterns. They make chaos look like it has meaning. They give you the illusion that maybe, just maybe, you can predict what comes next. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at the same sequence of events happening again.
The light in the distance,
the rain,
and the silence that followed.
3 nights now. 3 times the same faint orange flicker beyond the tree line. And every morning something new left at my door.
The first night, a stone, smooth, circular. The second, a feather, white, clean. The third, this morning, a small scrap of paper with 4 words, written in careful, steady handwriting. You're getting closer, Elliot. I'd seen things like this before, covering cult stories in the past. Copycats, hoaxes, obsessed readers, people who want to be part of something dark because they think it'll make them matter.
So I tried to stay grounded. Still, something about that note felt personal.
Not like a prank. Like whoever left it knew me. I took it to the local police. There's one officer still assigned to Brookevale, a man named Sutter, retired twice by the look of him. He read the note, frowned, and said, "Probably kids. Don't waste your breath." He offered me coffee, which tasted more like burnt paper than anything else. When I asked if he remembered the Children of Dawnlight, his eyes didn't move, but the muscle in his jaw did. He said, "That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Best you leave it that way." That should have been enough to walk away. But I didn't. I kept thinking about Pierce, the historian.
The way he'd looked at me that last day, almost like he knew something was coming.
I tried calling him again. Still nothing.
So I drove back to his house. The drive was longer than I remembered. The road seemed to stretch. By the time I reached his porch, the sun was already going down. The roses were gone, cut clean at the stems, the curtains drawn.
I knocked, waited. Nothing. The air smelled faintly of ash.
I circled around back, careful, calling out his name.
The back door was unlocked. Inside, the house looked the same at first. Still neat, still quiet.
But the air was heavy, and there was dust where there hadn't been before.
Books lay open on the table. Old town ledgers, handwritten journals, and newspaper clippings yellowed with age.
Most of them mentioned the church fire.
I started scanning headlines.
3 missing after fire. No bodies recovered. Town silent on investigation.
And then, tucked in the back of one of the books, a photograph.
It showed a group of people standing in front of a white chapel.
Dozens of them smiling for the camera.
And in the back row, Pierce's brother.
And next to him, a woman holding a small child. Her face looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. That's when I heard the sound, faint coming from the other room.
A slow, steady creak. I called out, but no one answered.
The floorboards in the hallway shifted once, then silence again.
I followed the noise to a closed door near the study. It was locked. For a long moment, I just stood there, hand on the knob, listening.
Then the air changed, colder somehow.
And faintly, I smelled it again. Smoke.
When I stepped back, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A line drawn on the door in charcoal, almost like a symbol. A circle bisected by a vertical line, same as the one from the letter. I didn't stay to find out what was behind that door. When I got back to the car, I realized I was shaking. Not from fear exactly, from recognition.
Because that symbol wasn't just familiar. I'd seen it before, in one of the archived police photos from the pyre site. It had been carved into the dirt right beside the remains.
The connection wasn't just coincidence anymore. The Children of Dawnlight hadn't disappeared.
Someone had kept their rituals alive.
and whoever it was, they knew me by name. Back at the motel, I started organizing my notes, timelines, locations, names,
trying to make it all fit together.
Every instinct told me to stop, to hand this off, let the police dig through the ashes of Brookevale. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. It doesn't know when to quit. I noticed something strange in Pierce's old clippings. The date of the fire, 1983, matched another incident in a neighboring county.
A missing persons case. 3 locals who vanished during a midsummer festival.
No one ever connected the 2 events, but the timing was exact.
And the lead investigator listed on the report, Detective Robert Sutter, the same man who'd handed me burnt coffee that morning.
I went back to the station. This time Sutter wasn't there. The clerk said he'd gone home early, so I asked for the old case files.
After some back and forth, they let me see the index log. Most of it was gone.
Water damage, they said.
But one entry was still legible.
Recovered artifact, Site B.
No description, no photo. Just that, and an evidence number that led nowhere. I copied it down anyway.
That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing something, faint static, like a radio between stations. I thought it was the motel television bleeding through the walls, until I realized it was coming from outside. When I looked out the window, the light was back, closer this time.
And in the glow, for the first time, I could see a figure, still, unmoving, watching.
I blinked and it was gone.
The next morning, I drove to Sutter's house.
A small 1-story place near the edge of the woods. No patrol car out front, no signs of life.
The door was open.
Inside, quiet, dust motes floating in beams of morning light. And on the kitchen table, a single photograph.
It showed a clearing in the forest taken at night.
In the center of the frame, a pyre, freshly built, no date, no caption. Just one phrase written on the back in the same steady handwriting as the note I'd received.
The dawn returns.
I left then.
Didn't pack my things, didn't check out of the motel.
Just drove.
Roads blurred, forests thickened. The air grew colder the farther I went.
But no matter how far I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still inside Brookevale.
Like the town stretched, folding itself around me.
Somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief, I realized something. This wasn't about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about surviving long enough to understand what the truth was.
Soft pause. Elliot's voice lowers.
The cult never vanished. They changed form.
Adapted.
Just like light does when you bend it through glass.
And every story I'd chased before this, every small town rumor, every local ghost, they all started to look the same in hindsight.
A pattern.
And maybe I'd been part of it longer than I thought.
I don't know where this ends, but I keep thinking about that first night. The flicker beyond the trees, the warmth that felt too inviting.
And I wonder if that's what they all saw. Not darkness,
but light. Beautiful. Endless.
The kind that burns but doesn't hurt. Maybe that's what the Dawnlight really is. Not a god, not a movement. Just the moment you stop running and walk willingly into the glow. There's a point when an investigation stops being about answers and starts being about endurance.
How long you can keep pushing before something in you gives way. For me, that point came the night the storm rolled in. It was late, or maybe it just felt that way. The sky over Brookevale was this heavy gray that never seemed to change. I remember pulling off the main road because the rain had gotten too thick, and I could barely see the lines. When I finally stopped, I realized where I'd pulled over. It was the same stretch of woods where I'd seen the first pyre.
I don't remember deciding to get out of the car. I just knew that I had to.
Maybe I thought I'd find something new. Or maybe I just wanted proof that I hadn't imagined everything. The rain was colder than I expected.
It had that metallic smell that always comes before lightning. Every step I took, the mud tried to pull me under.
And then through the trees I saw a shape.
A structure, wooden, symmetrical.
It looked new, another pyre. I froze because this one wasn't burned. It was waiting, built but untouched. And at its center, resting on the logs, was something small. A Polaroid camera.
My camera.
The same one I'd lost days ago when I ran from the motel. I walked closer, hands shaking from more than the cold. The camera had a single photo sticking out of it. When I pulled it free, it showed the pyre,
This exact one,
but in the picture it was already burning.
and standing beside it, blurred but unmistakable.
Was me. That's when I heard it again. The chanting, low, rhythmic, coming from everywhere at once.
It wasn't words, not really. It was more like breath being shaped into sound, rising and falling with the rain. I turned in circles, flashlight shaking across the trees.
No figures, no movement.
Just that sound. And then silence.
Total, absolute silence. I don't know how long I stood there before I noticed the light. Not the orange flicker of fire this time.
Something softer, paler.
It came from deeper in the woods, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat.
So I followed it.
Each step forward, the sound of rain seemed to fade.
The air grew warmer, and that strange smell, smoke and something sweet underneath it, filled my lungs. When the trees finally opened, I found myself standing at the edge of a clearing I'd never seen before.
There was no fire this time, just a ring of stones, blackened from years of heat. And above them, hanging from the branches, were dozens of effigies,
The same sun-shaped designs.
all of them swaying gently in a wind I couldn't feel.
I don't know how to describe what happened next. It wasn't an event, more like a realization that I wasn't looking at the center of the clearing. I was looking from it. I was standing where they stood.
And for the first time, I understood why they called themselves the Children of Dawnlight.
Because when you stare into darkness long enough, any flicker of light starts to look holy. Something moved in the distance. A figure walking between the trees, then another, and another. They didn't rush or hide.
They just approached slowly, evenly, like they'd been here all along and were finally coming to meet me.
I wanted to run, but my legs didn't move. It wasn't paralysis. It was acceptance.
Somewhere deep down, I think I always knew it would end this way.
When they reached the edge of the clearing, the first one spoke. A man's voice, calm, almost kind. He said, "Brother Ward, we've been waiting for you."
And then the sound I'd been hearing for weeks came alive again.
The chanting,
Only now it wasn't in the air.
it was in my head. I remember flashes after that. Light, the smell of earth.
A warmth on my face that didn't feel dangerous, just consuming.
In voices, not loud, not screaming, just whispering my name over and over, like a lullaby.
I don't think they hurt me. I don't even think they meant to. I think they were showing me something. When I woke up, or maybe I never did, I was somewhere else.
A wide room, concrete walls.
The air smelled of damp ash.
I couldn't see faces, only the shapes of people standing around me. There was no fire this time.
Only light, pure white light.
And then I heard one final voice, different from the rest. Soft, almost amused. It said,
You sought the truth, Elliot.
"And now you found it."
I remember opening my mouth to ask what that meant,
But no sound came out.
and then I realized I wasn't afraid anymore.
That's the part I can't explain. After everything, the fear was just gone. Like it had burned itself out. All that was left was warmth,
And light.
endless blinding light. If someone ever finds this story, if anyone remembers Brookevale,
Tell them I was wrong. The Dawnlight isn't a cult,
it's a calling.
and once it reaches you, there's no going back to the dark.
His tone softens, almost peaceful.
Maybe I didn't come here to expose them,
Maybe I came here to join them.
and maybe that's what truth really is.
Not something you uncover.
But something that finally uncovers you.
The light's getting closer now. I think I understand.